everyone, welcome to another weekly edition of the Cleveland Sports Show here on NordoniaHills.news, Spotify, YouTube, whichever platform you're listening on. I'm your host, Darius Sethna. Logan Purcell and I have a lot to discuss this week. Super Bowl 55 taking place this weekend. Also, getting you caught up on the NBA standings, most notably with the Cavs, and we'll also be giving you the sports fact of the day, keeping you updated with the Premier League as well. Ladies and gentlemen, our 100th episode is almost here, but here is episode 96 of the Cleveland Sports Show. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darius Sethna of NordoniaHills.news, and the Cleveland Sports Show starts right now. Hello everyone, welcome to our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Let's get you updated with your sports fact of the day. And I was mentioning Super Bowl in our intro a little bit ago. So here's the Super Bowl sports fact of the day for you. And it actually happened quite recently. February 5th, 2017, only 4 years ago, Super Bowl with the New England Patriots and the Atlanta Falcons. So the Patriots overcome a 28-3, yes, a 28-3 deficit, down by 25 points in the third quarter. They rally back against Matt Ryan and the Atlanta Falcons, and they scored 19 unanswered points in the fourth quarter alone. 19-0 fourth quarter score. It tied this game up at 28. And then, in overtime, the Patriots convert and take their first lead of the game in overtime. The Patriots would eventually win by a final score of 34-28. This was a miraculous comeback in Tom Brady's 5th Super Bowl championship. No better way to do it in a dramatic fashion like that one. More specifically, Tom Brady threw for 43 for 62 in that game for 466 yards, 2 touchdowns as well for Tom Brady. So on this day, February 5th, back in 2017, Patriots upset Atlanta in a dramatic comeback, 34-28. Logan Purcell and I are going to talk more about this upcoming Super Bowl, which also features Tom Brady yet again. We'll be mentioning who will be giving you our picks and giving you an analysis on who will come out on top in Tampa at the Raymond James Stadium for Super Bowl 55. Let's get you caught up now with Premier League standings, ladies and gentlemen. That's right, it's time. We had some games this past week. The Premier League, Soccer League in England. We'll get you updated with the scores now. So Sheffield United defeated West Brom by a final score of 2-1. Wolves took on Arsenal this week as well. They defeated Arsenal 2-1. Manchester United defeats Southampton 9-0. Yes, 9-0 the final score. And here's what was amazing. 9 different scorers for Manchester United. Actually, 8 different to be more specific, because we had an own goal in that 9-0 game. But 9-0 Southampton. 2 red cards as well given to Southampton, so it was just not their night. 1 red card given in the second minute to Alex Jenkowicz of Southampton, and then the other one given closer to the end of the game from Jan Bednarek in the 86th minute with that red card. More games for you in the Premier League. Crystal Palace defeats Newcastle 2-1. Manchester defeats Burnley 2-0. Leicester City also with a 2-0 win over Fulham. Everton took on Leeds this past week, beat them 2-1. West Ham 3-1 victory against Aston Villa. Brighton hang on in a tight one against Liverpool, 1-0. And then Chelsea defeated Tottenham yesterday, 1-0 final score of that one. Overall standings, ladies and gentlemen. And yet again, it is the battle of the Manchesters, Manchester Derby. Right now, Manchester City is on top of the Premier League with 47 points, 14 wins, 5 draws, 2 losses for Man City on the season right now. In second place is their inner city rival, Manchester United. Manchester United with 13 wins, 5 draws, and 4 losses on the season. They're at 44 points right now. Leicester City come in 2 points behind them with 13 wins, 3 draws, 6 losses for 42 points. Liverpool comes in at 4th place, 11 wins, 7 draws, and 4 losses for them for a total of 40 points. West Ham United comes in 5th place, 11 wins, 5 draws, 6 losses for West Ham for a combined 38 points. And then in 6th place, we have Chelsea with 22 matches played, 6 wins, 6 draws, 6 losses for them for a combined 36 points. Top goal scorers in the Premier League right now. Mohamed Salah remains on top of the chart. The Liverpool striker with 15 goals so far on the season. We have multiple players tied for second place. Those players include Bruno Fernandes of Manchester United, Dominic Calvert-Lewin of Everton, Harry Kane of Tottenham, and then his Tottenham teammate Son Heung-min as well. Each of those 4 players with 12 goals so far on the season. And we have another player who is now part of the double-digit assist tally in the Premier League, and that's Jack Grealish, the Aston Villa player with 10 assists on the season so far. Kevin De Bruyne of Manchester City also with 10 assists on the season. Those two are tied for second. Harry Kane still leads the league in assists, however, not by a wide margin. Kane of Tottenham Hotspur with only 11 assists to lead the league. And more matches for you, ladies and gentlemen. We've got match day 23 of 38 coming up for you this weekend. Standings, as I mentioned last week, spicy. They are very, very competitive right now, and there's no better time to be a Premier League soccer fan and getting up early for these games and watching them. Now, tomorrow morning is when the party starts for the Premier League. Aston Villa will be taking on Arsenal tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. Burnley going up against Brighton tomorrow at 10 a.m. Newcastle going up against Southampton at 10 a.m. tomorrow as well. At 12:30 p.m. tomorrow, we have Fulham going up against West Ham. So if you like ham as much as I do, that's definitely going to be a game you're going to want to watch. Manchester United going up against Everton tomorrow at 3 p.m. Tottenham Hotspur going up against West Brom. Wolves going up against Leicester City on Super Bowl Sunday at 9 a.m. Liverpool taking on Manchester City on Sunday at 11:30. 2:15 on Sunday, we have Sheffield United taking on Chelsea, and then our final match of this week will be on Monday, Leeds United facing off against Crystal Palace. That game will be at 3 p.m. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our Premier League soccer news. We'll have more to talk about next week. We'll wrap up this past week for you, and get you ready for the following week of Premier League action, and also get you updated with those standings. But for right now, let's bring in Logan Purcell, who is going to be joining us to talk about Cavs and the Super Bowl. And Logan Purcell here with us. Logan, thank you so much for joining me yet again. I really appreciate having you on the show. Man, we have a lot to discuss with the NBA. We're going to give our Super Bowl predictions for this Sunday. So, Logan, let's talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers real quick, because this is the Cleveland Sports Show. It's been, I guess, a bittersweet week, you could say, for the Cavs. In between our podcast episodes, Logan, Cavs actually had 4 games, and it started with a pretty terrible loss against the New York Knicks. Cavs' lowest scoring output of the season last Friday night, lost by 21 points, a 102-81 loss to the hands of the New York Knicks at Madison Square Garden in New York. Cavs were outscored by 12 in the second quarter, and it just didn't seem like there was a lot of energy out there to me in this game against New York. Now, the Knicks, to me, Logan, they're ninth place, actually. They're 10-13. Julius Randle last week against the Cavs, 16 points in 35 minutes, so he wasn't, over the top amazing, but these two young guys, RJ Barrett, and the guy who's really impressed me so far is Emmanuel Quickley of the New York Knicks. So, Logan, to me, was it the youth of the New York Knicks that just got the better of the Cavs, or was this just bad Cavs overall? We know the New York Knicks are improving, but the Cavs should be able to handle the Knicks. So, what are your thoughts? Was it good Knicks or bad Cavs?
Well, I think it was a little bit of both. I think to a degree, you got to give credit to that, that rookie guard out of Kentucky, Emmanuel Quickley, as you mentioned. He has emerged as a star. He had 25 that night, and that is a, really good performance as a sixth man off the bench. That's really impressive.
Yeah.
And, off 24 minutes, that's efficient basketball as well. But for the Cavaliers, you look like, you look at the score, they lost by 21 points. And if you look at the box score, it doesn't really look too different. You see Garland, the leading all scorers for the Cavs with 24. You had that really good bench scoring with Allen. You had Sexton with 17. But,
right.
Besides those three guys, you had, 5, 8, maybe 3, 4. Right. You had a couple guys, But probably the biggest disappointment for me when I say bad Cavs has got to be Andre Drummond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Despite his 15-rebound performance, he had 4 points on 2 of 7 shooting.
Yeah.
And to me, that's got to improve. And I know it's only one game, but if you want to be a leader of a team, you got to consistently play well. You might see Kevin Durant, play bad. I'm not comparing Andre Drummond to Kevin Durant by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
Two completely different players, two completely different levels.
Yeah.
But Kevin Durant is the leader of his team, and Andre Drummond wants to be the leader of the Cavs. So he's got to be that consistent player. He can't be, scoring 4 points. I can't tell you, you've never seen Kevin Durant score 4 points in a game.
Yeah. And what I also think, Logan, you mentioned that those 4 points by Andre Drummond. You mentioned 2 of 7 shooting. And another thing is only 7 shots. So it's not like, Andre Drummond was, going 2 for 20 and we felt confident that he was still having that confidence to shoot his shot. He only had 7 shots. So to me, Logan, what do you think Andre Drummond has to do in terms of just being dominant in the paint? Because, New York's not really known for having a great, effective center. Mitchell Robinson's probably their best option. So what are things that you see that Andre Drummond needs to do if he wants to have a successful season with the Cavs?
I think Andre Drummond needs to take his game to the next level from a mental standpoint. One of the most underrated thing in sports and in general, not even, just, professional sports, but professional sports as well, is the biggest part of any sport is the mental game.
Right.
And I think that is probably the biggest part where he lacks. He's clearly not the biggest guy in the league. He's, 6'10", 6'11". He's not huge. He's a bigger body. He can run, but he's not the fastest center in the league. So he doesn't, he's not the best at anything physically, but he has that mindset. He doesn't have that mindset just yet. He's got a lot of physical capabilities. I think he's proven clearly that he's got a chance to be one of the best players, in the NBA. He's averaging 18 a game this year. He's averaging, the most rebounds of any player in the NBA at 14.6. Right. He's having a great year, but I can see him as a 25 and 15 kind of guy if he can take his game to the next level.
Yeah, I will certainly be interested to see how Andre Drummond's going to fare off with the Cavs. They're going to have a tough schedule coming up, Logan. We'll get to that a little bit later, but now let's get past that game against the Knicks. We're going to talk about these 2 back-to-back games they had against the Minnesota Timberwolves and the number 1 overall pick, Anthony Edwards. Now, Edwards certainly proved his worth in the Cavs' matchup in Minneapolis with the Timberwolves this past Sunday. Edwards with 23 points in 30 minutes to go along with 5 rebounds and 4 assists. Malik Beasley, who's I really like as a guard, Logan, 28 minutes for him, 23 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists. So, even though he's a guard, Coach Ryan Saunders of the Minnesota Timberwolves saying, hey, this guy needs to be a scoring guard. And he is showing me that he can be a consistent scorer and is a quality player for this Timberwolves team moving forward. On the Cavs side of things, Andre Drummond, after that horrid 4-point performance we were mentioning a little bit ago in New York, he bounced back. 25 points, 22 rebounds for Andre Drummond, with finishing with that double-double. Colin Sexton and Darius Garland combined for 33 points for the Cavs in their starting backcourt. Jared Allen with 10 points and 5 rebounds as well. But here was one thing that struck me, Logan. Larry Nance has been dealing with an injury a little bit, has had a wrist injury, hasn't been playing a lot. Only 2 points in the loss, the 109-104 loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves on Sunday. And then to me, Cedi Osman, 9 points in only 23 minutes. So if we look at this Cavs-Timberwolves game from Sunday night in Minneapolis, what were kind of your takeaways? Because Drummond clearly had a great game. Sexton and Garland played decent, but Cedi Osman just was not there. Taurean Prince only 4 points. So what does Coach Bickerstaff need to do to get these bench guys going? Because Cedi Osman's not been very productive. Taurean Prince, I haven't been hearing his name a lot this week. Dylan Windler is still yet to find his groove, and Damian Dotson's kind of in and out of the lineup. So what does Coach Bickerstaff have to do to get these guys, the supporting cast, basically on a consistent role?
Well, the first thing that I would have to say I take away, it's very easy in a game like this. You got 4 guys that play pretty well, and then the rest do nothing.
Yeah.
It's very easy to explain to, this player didn't do something, this player didn't do something, but I'm not going to do that for this reason. I'm going to talk about a few different stats for a team comparison, right?
Okay.
The Cavs had 21 more rebounds total than the Timberwolves. And the fact that they lost this game to me is absolutely unbelievable, because if you have 55 rebounds compared to the Timberwolves' 34,
yeah,
I don't know how you don't capitalize on that.
And they were winning for the majority of this game, Logan. So I mean, the Timberwolves really had to make a good third quarter run. They had a 33-25 third quarter. So, but I mean, the Cavs kind of blew this to me. But as you were saying, I didn't want to interrupt you, but yeah.
And that was exactly my next point. The other big stat comparison team-wise is turnovers. The Timberwolves had 8 turnovers compared to the Cavs' 19.
Yep.
And to me, that unfortunately lays entirely on the hands of the guards. Both Garland and Sexton alone had 11 combined. And that, to me, is the biggest factor of this game, because, I mean, a lot of the times, that last, 5-6 minutes of the game, it was like turnover city. They were either coming down, taking pretty wild shots, or turning the ball over, and it turned into easy, fast break points for the Timberwolves. And to answer the other question, about how Bickerstaff can get these guys on the same page, they have to decide who the leader of this team is. Yeah. To me, this isn't one of those teams that has a clear leader like the Lakers. They don't have that guy that's taking leadership from both an example and a vocal standpoint.
Right.
Colin Sexton and both Andre Drummond and Colin Sexton both clearly have taken, the lead by example role. But, I can't really say that I've seen a guy on this team take a vocal leadership, I mean, I think of a guy like, Patrick Beverley, right?
Yeah.
For instance, with the Clippers. He isn't an elite player by, any means. Nobody thinks that Patrick Beverley is an elite player. But guess what? Anybody in the NBA who knows anything about, anybody more than their favorite team knows Patrick Beverley, because this guy is known as being one of the biggest leaders on this team, because of his ability to stay vocal. And this team just doesn't have that. And I think Bickerstaff needs to implement a system where he's got a number one guy who's always talking.
Do you think, Logan, it's common for young NBA teams who are rebuilding, such as the Cavs, to not have that vocal leader? So, like the Philadelphia 76ers in their process, or the Suns before Chris Paul got there. Is this a common situation that the Cavs have found themselves in terms of not having that vocal leader?
Yeah, it is common, but in my belief, that's what separates great leaders, great players from the good players. And I'll explain that, right? So you think of a guy like Colin Sexton, right?
Right.
A very intense basketball player, loves to play the game. He's a great scorer. He's a great player. And then you compare a guy like Luka Doncic, right? They're both very similar in age. I'm not going to go as far as saying they're very similar in skill level, but I'm not going to call it a landslide.
Yeah.
They both can score. They both can shoot efficiently. Sexton isn't nearly the passer that Luka is, but I mean, he's just. I mean, I think I would take Sexton defensively over Luka.
Yeah.
But the big separation between the two is Luka is a leader. He talks. He makes the people around him better.
But I feel like
the same about Colin
Sexton. I feel like Luka has better players around him as well, though. I'm not disputing what you're saying, but I feel like, as disappointing as they've been, they got blown out last night by the Warriors. But the Dallas Mavericks have a squad, right? They have Porzingis. You've got Hardaway Jr. You've got Dorian Finney-Smith. You have Trey Burke. All these guys have established themselves in the NBA. I don't think you can say the same thing yet about Colin Sexton's squad, because you just have a lot of young guys trying to, implement their style in the NBA, and they're still trying to find their identity. So what are your thoughts on that? I feel like Luka just has better teammates overall.
Yeah, I agree, but like I said before, I mean, I agree with the fact that the Dallas Mavericks may be, like, from a on-paper standpoint better, but it's not like I'm comparing, the Lakers to the Cavs, because the Mavs are not the Lakers. I wouldn't even consider the Mavs being near the Celtics.
Yeah.
I mean, the Mavs are just, they have, to me, the build is very similar to the Cavs. I mean, I would personally take Darius Garland over Tim Hardaway with the way that he's played this year. I think he's played an efficient game, and I think that just as much as I'm putting it on the hands of guys like Colin Sexton and Andre Drummond, the exact same situation goes into the hands of J.B. Bickerstaff, because I'm not saying that Colin Sexton has to be that guy. I'm saying that's how Colin Sexton's going to take his game to the next level. And I think that the next thing Bickerstaff has to do to take this team up, maybe make a top one of the higher playoff seeds than 9 or 8 or 7 or 8, is he's got to bring in a veteran who talks.
Right.
Because this team just has the ball movement is kind of there to a degree, but I think that this team would be touching other realms if they were able to pick up a veteran who knows how to talk and can lead these young guys, because every young guy needs a mentor.
Yeah, you were talking about Turnover City with the Cavs a little bit ago, Logan. So Cavs left the Twin Cities, and they went back home the next night to the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, this time a home game against Minnesota. Much closer game. Well, they were both close games, but this one was closer. 198 victory for Cleveland, a 2-point win. This game was tied after the first quarter at 29, Logan. Cavs had a great second quarter defensively, only allowed Minnesota to score 15 points in that second quarter. But the fourth quarter, Cavs were kind of collapsing there a little bit. They're only a 31-24 fourth quarter score in favor of the Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards from Minnesota, 13 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists. So not as great of a performance in the game he had the prior night, but even with those 13 points, he was still the second leading scorer that night on Monday against the Cavs. D'Angelo Russell was the leading scorer for the Wolves with 18 points. In looking at the Cavs side of things, Jared Allen with a monster night, Logan. 23 points and 18 rebounds. That's the Jared Allen that the Cavs certainly traded for and asked for. Colin Sexton only had 3 assists, so didn't do a lot of dishing out, was taking the scoring upon himself. 26 points for Sexton on Monday night against the Wolves. Darius Garland and Cedi Osman combined for 29 points as well. And this was a game that Andre Drummond did not play in either. So a couple questions for you, Logan. I'm going to ask you about Anthony Edwards in a little bit, but right now, your takeaways on this Cavs win, because we were talking about turnovers. Cavs, still had 13 turnovers in this one, but it seemed like they made shots at the right time and got a quality win.
Yeah, to me, this is one where I'm going to have to pick on the box score. And the reasoning I say that is I see, 2 big time differences that we're not so used to as of recent. And, there's 2 gentlemen on the Cleveland Cavaliers by the name of Darius Garland and Jared Allen are the 2 guys that I'd like to mention. Mm-hmm. I'll start with Darius Garland, right? I mean, 19 points a game. He's been doing that. He's had a couple, nice little games, just under 20 every night. But the big number there is 11 assists. And I think this Cavs team is really, as I mentioned earlier, with the guy that talks, they're also missing a true passer.
Yeah. They
have a couple guards who can pass the ball, right? But a lot of teams in the NBA that are successful have that one guy who's getting 8 or 9 assists a game. The Cavs don't have that. I think Sexton's getting around 4 or 5.
Right.
Or I believe 1. is where his average is at, but that's not nearly, again, you think of the elite teams, you think of the Lakers, LeBron's getting around 8.7. You think of, I don't know, the Nets, you've got Kyrie getting 7 assists a game, even if it's around 6 or 7, they need that kind of passer, and I think Garland displayed a very, very elite level of passing in this game, and that's one of the biggest reasons they won.
Yeah, Garland was actually the only player on Monday night to have double-digit assist tallies. He had 11 assists. No one else had even 5. So that was a very impressive performance. So Garland gets that double-double in 38 minutes of play. Logan, I wanted to ask you about this too. We saw Anthony Edwards for 2 games this week, the number 1 overall pick. But based on the way that he's played, he played in those 2 games as well as the overall season, do you think that he should have been the number 1 overall pick this year?
Anthony Edwards?
Yes. And if it's not...
He was the number 1 overall pick.
Well, yeah, no. Do you believe he should have been the number 1 pick? Or,
I misunderstood the question.
Yeah, my bad. And if not, who else would you get?
Me personally, I do believe he should have been the number 1 pick, and I'll tell you why. I think that, LaMelo Ball has played the best out of all the rookies this year. If I had to, set up my rookie rankings, I've got LaMelo at number 1, I've got Anthony Edwards at 2, and I've got Tyrese Halliburton at 3. I think Tyrese Halliburton is the biggest steal of that draft, though, so far.
You don't like James... you don't really like James Wiseman out of Golden State and what he's been able to do?
I think James Wiseman's played well, but I can't say for sure that he's played better than Tyrese Halliburton, considering the fact that he's got the greatest shooter of all time on his team.
Right.
And you can't tell me that De'Aaron Fox is, any more than maybe a brink of an all-star player.
Right, yeah.
At least this year he's played so. But for Anthony Edwards, the reason I say that he should be the number 1 pick, and yet I rank him lower than LaMelo Ball, is the fact that when you look at this, the way that this team is built, you've got a really, a very proven center who has, I don't think he's hit his potential yet, in Karl Anthony Towns, the guy that can score the basketball.
Yep.
You've got a guard who's known for being able to, force space and pass the ball when he has to. And then you add in one of the most athletic player in the entire draft, who can, score from all 3 levels. He's a bigger guy. LaMelo Ball, they're both around the same height. I believe Anthony Edwards is 6'6" or 6'8", around there. But LaMelo Ball is 6'8", so they're both relatively the same size. But when you look at the body type, Anthony Edwards is a much larger figure. And I think this team needed that pure forward. That is what this team was missing. And I don't think adding another guard would have really helped this team improve at all. So I still believe that for the Minnesota Timberwolves themselves, I think that Anthony Edwards was the correct pick at number 1 overall.
So, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed watching him play. And as you were mentioning, Logan really has some great athleticism. I'll be interested to see what he does with the Timberwolves going forward in these next few years. Now, last Cavs game we're going to talk about, Logan, this past Wednesday against the LA Clippers. And if you did not watch this game and you looked at the score, you saw 121-99 loss. Clippers came into Cleveland. You probably thought Clippers were leading this game all the way, no problems whatsoever. That was actually the story of the second half. The first half was a very, very competitive game. It was only a 52-49 deficit for the Cavs. I thought this was going to be a game that went down to the wire, and this was with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George playing. The Clippers actually came off a loss to the Nets the prior night on Tuesday in Brooklyn, so they were on the second night of a back-to-back, and overall, the Cavs just did not have it in that third quarter. Clippers outscore Cleveland 36-25 alone in the third quarter, and Paul George, he was sensational to me, Logan. I mean, he was controlling the game the way he wanted to, getting to his spots. He just looked so comfortable out there, and that was really the Paul George that the Clippers had been waiting for. Now, on the Cavs side, Logan, if we look at the overall stats to that one, Sexton played well. Garland had a very, very strong game. So when you look at that game against the Clippers, what stood out to you? Because I know this was really a tale of 2 different halves. So what was your overall analysis of it?
So, for me, there was a couple of things, right? So you mentioned Paul George and the sensational performance he had at 36 points, shooting 8 of 9 from deep.
Right.
And I'll explain the biggest numerical thing to me that stood out. But after this, to me, that performance goes on the hands of our recent draft pick, Isaac Okoro. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure on draft day when he was drafted, they talked about all the elite skills of all of these top picks. LaMelo Ball with his passing, Anthony Edwards with his athleticism, James Wiseman with his post work.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they mentioned defense for Isaac Okoro.
They did. That's why the Cavs drafted him,
yeah. And it wasn't that, even if, Paul George had a sensational night, maybe Okoro didn't get the kind of matchup that he wanted against him, and maybe he was guarding Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard still had 24 points. He couldn't slow down, much less contain either of them at nearly the level that he had been talked about. And clearly, for me, from my standpoint, being, the number 6 overall pick, I don't really understand how you could possibly be drafted at number 6 overall, be expected to be an elite defender, not perform, and then score 2 points at 1 of 5 shooting on offense.
Yeah.
So, to me, the biggest disappointment for the Cavaliers has to be Isaac Okoro. Poor defensive performance, stagnant, pretty pathetic offensively, and that was just the biggest disappointment from a player standpoint.
Did you expect Isaac? I mean, because I kind of felt that Isaac Okoro wasn't going to be great offensively anyway, because you had Sexton, you have Garland, you have Drummond, now Allen's there, you have Taurean Prince. So offensively, you're set on a good night. So, I mean, Okoro, I think defensively, he's a rookie. Can we give him that pass defensively? Because he's a rookie and he's, this isn't, college. This is Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, totally different animal. Can we give Okoro a pass this year because it is his rookie season and he's having that adjustment year?
Well, I don't think we can give him, I would say, a pass. And I'll explain that, all right? So if Paul George, for instance, right, had shot, he had scored 40 points and he took 40 shots. Right? Yeah. Like Russell Westbrook did a few years ago against Pat Beverly, running his mouth and whatnot. Pat Beverly said, you took 40 shots, right?
Right.
Paul George did it on 20 shots, and he missed 1 3-pointer. It wasn't like Paul George was getting, a hand in his face every time. He seemed to be getting wide-open shots almost.
Yeah.
In NBA standards is what I mean. Right? And, you make the comment about... two things I'll say here, but you make the comment about college compared to the NBA, and I agree. If this was 10 games into the season, we're a quarter of the way through the season.
Right.
At this point, to me, you're getting towards that All-Star break. This is when you need to ramp it up. There's no more I'm a rookie excuses. I'm done with that.
Yeah.
You could have made those excuses a couple of weeks ago. I think that now it is time to. We're really going to see the true colors of these rookies, and I think that's why LaMelo Ball now, as a starter, is getting over 20 points a game. But the other aspect that you have to consider is the fact, offensively, you can have bad games, right?
Of course.
You can, your shot can be off. We've seen it from the best of them. Defensively, to me, unless you have a lagging and nagging injury, it's effort. And if you're not getting a hand in the face, that is pure effort, and that's either a great system, a really, really great player, or you're just not playing great defense, or a mix of all three. And to me, it was a mix of both Paul George being an elite scorer and Isaac Okoro's pretty weak defense in this game. Yeah,
and as I mentioned, George was fantastic, 36 points for the All-Star to go along with 6 assists and 4 rebounds. Logan, Clippers are looking good overall. They're 17-6 on the season right now. They're going to play the Celtics tonight on national TV, so have a chance to improve that record to 18-6 if they win tonight. Their overall standings in the Western Conference, they are second, only behind Utah. They actually are tied with the Lakers in terms of win-loss records, 17-6. So I know, Logan, we were talking about how the Clippers most likely won't be able to stop the Lakers, and we were talking about how disappointing the Clippers were, especially after that bubble disaster back in September. But have you changed your mind on the Clippers? And if so, what do you see that's different?
Well, for me, I can't say for sure that I've seen that I can change my mind or perspective on the Clippers, and I'll tell you why. And this comes back to the bubble performance. Paul George is an elite player. He always has been, since his days out in Indiana. But at the end of the day, every NBA all-star, superstar is judged by one thing, and that is his performances in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, LeBron James, right? He is one of the clutchest players in the NBA. He has been for years. He was nagged on it, and he was judged on it for years and years and years when he wasn't. He changed it. He's changed the narrative. Paul George needs to change the narrative. I can't say that I'm going to be able to completely change my perspective on this team until I see them perform at an elite level in the playoffs. Because at the end of the day, I can't. That's like me saying, okay, well, now I believe the Bucks are going to be in the championship this year.
Yeah.
Because they're playing well in the regular season. But we could have said that the past 2 years, and they've gotten knocked out in both rounds.
Right.
Both playoffs.
Right.
And it seemingly almost effortlessly. So to me, we've got to kind of gauge this team as they head into the playoffs. I think it's a bit early. I hate to say it, despite me mentioning how we're a quarter way through the season, but I think it's a bit too early to start talking about, this team being different than it was last year. 'Cause at the end of the day, it kind of is the same team. They've got a couple other pieces, but, they lost Montrezl Harrell, who was a great player off the bench for them.
Yes.
But this is going to be a different team than we saw last year, but I'm going to have to wait until the playoffs to make my judgment on this team.
Yeah, I mean, Clippers still obviously elite with those two guys, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, but, can Lou Williams, can some of these other guys step up to the challenge along with Paul George and get them over the hump? I'm very excited to see what the Clippers will do. Overall, Logan, Cavs have a rough schedule coming up. They're going to have their work cut out for them. They have 2 games this weekend against the Bucks. Actually, 1 game tonight from Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse in downtown Cleveland. Tomorrow night as well, same venue, Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Tomorrow at 8 p.m., Bucks and Cavs go at it again for that second night of the back-to-back. And then the Cavs start a 5-game West Coast road trip, Logan. They're going to be going to Phoenix on Monday. They'll actually be in Phoenix at the time. They'll be taking on Devin Booker and the Suns, who look like they are promising, although they lost to the Pelicans a few nights ago. They'll then be taking on the Nuggets, the Trailblazers, the Clippers, and the Warriors before returning home for a matchup against the Spurs on the 17th. So, Logan, in this 5-game road trip and in these 2 games at home against Milwaukee, what are you looking for from the Cavs overall, especially on this road trip if they want to be successful these next couple of weeks?
I'm looking for the performance of one specific player that I have in mind, and that's Jared Allen. I think he's had a very, to say the least, definition of a roller coaster start in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Had a couple big performances where he's had 20 and almost 20. And then he's had those games where he's had like 7 and 10. So, to me, I'm waiting for a little bit of consistency, and I personally think that Cavs are waiting for that too. And I think that it's about time that he kicks into gear and starts playing like the Jared Allen that I believe there is inside of him. But for me, it's going to be Jared Allen matched up, with Giannis and that size of this team, the ability to shoot the ball. I'm very excited to see this team, but Jared Allen has got to be what I'm looking for as well. As a team, I'm looking for the turnover numbers to drop a little bit.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be excited to see what the Cavs are going to be able to do on this road trip, especially against teams like Portland and Phoenix, where I think they can be competitive with those teams. I'm also looking forward to see the Cavs taking on the Warriors in San Francisco. This will be the first time the Cavs will get to play a road game at the new Chase Center in downtown San Francisco. They were originally supposed to play last year in about April, but due to the league shutdown, they obviously were not able to. Overall standings in the NBA right now, Sixers, despite a tough loss to the Trailblazers last night at home, are still in first place in the Eastern Conference. They're 16-7 and are 10-2 at the Wells Fargo Center in Philly. However, they are 6-5 on the road. So especially last year, 76ers were tremendous at home, horrible on the road, and it kind of looks like it's playing out that way, so hopefully that doesn't come back to bite them later. They're still in first place. Number 2, Milwaukee Bucks, 13-8 overall. They've won their last 2 games. One of those included a blowout victory over the Pacers in Milwaukee this past Wednesday. Nets, Logan, in 3rd place. They had a great performance against the LA Clippers on Tuesday night. That seemed to me, if the Nets played that way, Logan, if the Nets play the way they did against the LA Clippers, they have a chance they really can win the whole thing. Now, they had a terrible start. They were down 16-4 early. I mean, didn't look good, but they clawed their way back into that game and they won by only 4. But what really impressed me was the tenacity of the team, as well as James Harden. James Harden, a triple-double machine. It looks like, everyone was wondering after the trade, Logan, who's going to be that guy that's going to sacrifice for the Nets? Is it going to be Durant, Irving, or Harden? And so far, it looks like Harden's the guy that's going to have to sacrifice. He actually played the most minutes of any Net on Tuesday against the Clippers, and only had 11 assists, only in 23 points, excuse me. But overall, what do you think about the Nets now? Are you beginning to have some more faith in them, especially against a win against a quality opponent?
Yeah, the Nets are one of the interesting teams that we have in this league right now, after the James Harden trade. But I wanted to mention, I actually got the privilege of watching this game. And there was one moment, a few moments in the game where I really saw this Nets team, and it was kind of ironic, right? And I'm gonna kind of illustrate it for you. So, there's about 4 minutes to go in the game. It's a tight one. It's a 2-point game. Kyrie Irving comes down, pulls up, and hits a 3, okay?
Right.
Next possession, Harden comes down, does his signature step back, and knocks it down.
Yep.
The following possession, Durant comes down and hits a 3 right in the face of Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, who is going to stop this team?
Yeah,
and just then, that defensive possession, Paul George throws an easy bounce pass back to Kawhi Leonard. This team, in my opinion, will be the greatest offensive show since the 2017 Golden State Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if anything, it'll be better. You've got better passers. I think you have more elite scorers, not shooters, scorers. I think the Warriors team was built with one really elite scorer and a bunch of shooters.
Yeah.
You have pure scorers on this team, guys that can do it all 3 levels. This will be the greatest offensive team in the NBA as long as they're together. But within that same token, I think it will be a bottom 5 defensive team for as long as they're together as well. And that is going to hinder their ability to win games. So to me, if they don't figure out this defense, the paint issue, the Clippers were getting anywhere they wanted. There was no questions asked. They were doing whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. They were scoring at ease.
Right.
And yet, the Nets found a way to win. So it gives me confidence, but not enough to say anything more than I used to about this team. I'm still concerned about the defensive aspect.
To me, though, Logan, a little bit here, we'll talk about this a little bit more, and then we'll get into our next topic, Super Bowl. But I wanted to end our NBA talk with this. Lakers, aren't as great defensively, to me, as they were last year. Now, they have improved offensively. You've got Schroeder. You've got Gasol, who can still hit shots. Obviously LeBron and Anthony Davis. But Schroeder was really the big acquisition. Wesley Matthews as well. But they're not as great defensively as they were last season. Last season, when I was watching Lakers games, Logan, I was like, there's no way you're going to be able to score on this team. You've got a Defensive Player of the Year candidate in Davis. LeBron's still, athletic as ever. And, you have all these trees with, obviously, Davis, but McGee and Dwight Howard. The center of the Lakers right now is primarily Marc Gasol. And Montrezl Harrell, I really love the acquisition of Montrezl Harrell, but to me, it just seems like he might be shorter than some other post players, and when it really counts, can he get it done? I have faith in him that he'll bring that defensive tenacity, but at the end of the day, I think height matters as well. So it's not like, to me at least, it doesn't seem like the Lakers are this great defensive show that they were last year. So I feel like if the Nets get to the finals and the Lakers get to the finals and the Nets play the Lakers, Nets can certainly take advantage of the Lakers on the defensive end. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that standpoint. But to me, at least, I can't tell you that there's an elite defender on the Nets. There's nobody that's ever been a Defensive Player of the Year candidate on that team. Never.
Right. Even,
minus DeAndre Jordan at his prime, of course.
Do you think that Kevin Durant can be a defensive player? Because he was a quality defensive player with the Warriors. Do you think he can do that again with Brooklyn?
I do. I just don't think he has the motivation to play that. I don't think that's the system that Steve Nash is going to build in Brooklyn. And that, to me, is just me, calling him out. That he's a first-year head coach, and Steve Nash, in his playing days, wasn't an elite defender himself. He was primarily, basically, a lesser Kyrie Irving, to be honest with you, or a lesser Chris Paul. And when it comes to players in the NBA,
yeah,
if you think about it, when it comes to pure, sheer dominance, there are like 2 or 3 guys that come to my mind. LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Kevin Durant. To me, nobody in the NBA matches up with those guys better than 2 guys, Kawhi Leonard and Anthony Davis. Those are the 2 guys that match up with those guys. And I'll tell you why. Giannis is 7 foot. I don't care what anybody says. Giannis.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for that little stoppage there. We just had a power malfunction here in Macedonia that only lasted a couple of seconds. So I'll get back to Logan's analysis here. So, Logan, we were talking about Kevin Durant, that kind of defense. You were mentioning how Giannis Antetokounmpo, how Anthony Davis and Kawhi Leonard are really the elite defenders of this game and can guard those dominant players you were mentioning, like KD, LeBron, and Giannis. So continue with that analysis, your overall thoughts on it.
Yeah, and you mentioned how the Lakers, are not an elite defensive team, and I agree, but to me they're at least tolerable. I look at the Nets, and I'm sorry, that is a terrible excuse for a defensive team. They have almost nobody who can match up. Think about it. If you have a team, right, let's put it into this perspective. You have a team, let's say they do go to the finals and play the Lakers.
Yeah.
More than likely you're going to match up Kevin Durant on Anthony Davis. Because if you match him up on LeBron, who's guarding Anthony Davis? DeAndre Jordan? Because come on, that's a joke.
Yeah.
Anthony Davis will average 40. And I'm calling that now. You can save this. If DeAndre Jordan guards Anthony Davis in the NBA Finals this year, Anthony Davis will score 40 points a game.
He'll get Finals MVP for sure.
Yeah. But more than likely, they're going to put Durant on Anthony Davis. And who are you going to put on LeBron? Kyrie Irving?
You probably double.
James Harden.
I would assume you double on LeBron, and then you have KD going up against Anthony Davis, and then you're just doubling LeBron. Like that's all I can think of, honestly.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point. Because then, as you just mentioned yourself, they have added elite scorers, and the team Dennis Schroeder is an easy 15 points a game when he's getting his shots. Marc Gasol, though despite his age, is no joke offensively. And, you've just got some shooters besides it. Taylor Horton-Tucker's playing on an elite level so far. Well, not elite level, but he's playing on a better level than he did last year. But back to the defensive standpoint, I think that today's game is very much of an ISO game. And if you can have a couple guys who can defend ISO, then that's all you need. And I don't think the Nets have that.
And this is why I wasn't a big fan of the James Harden trade, because now the Nets have lost so many pieces. So hypothetically, Logan, if the Nets had the original roster they had when they went into the season, could they still contend with the Lakers on the defensive end?
Defensively, yes, I do, but I don't know if they'd have the firepower offensively. And I'll tell you why. Physically, from a pure physicality standpoint, they don't have a LeBron James and an Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
I mean, I would never even, and I hate to say it, to anybody, who is a Kevin Durant fan, and, this might sound a little bit crazy, but I think it's offensive to put LeBron James and Kevin Durant in the same sentence.
Really?
Personally. I think LeBron James is on another level. It's kind of like comparing Patrick Mahomes and, Tom Brady now, like playing now. Tom Brady's the greatest of all time, but you're not going to put him in the same breath as Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
It's kind of the same thing for me. I think Kevin Durant's an elite scorer, but he's not nearly the passer. I don't think. He's not nearly the rebounder, and he's just not nearly as physical as LeBron James. But I just think, personally, he'd get outworked. So I can't say that they would have the offensive firepower if they didn't make that trade.
Yeah, we have brought up some great points in terms of what the Nets can be able to do in these playoffs. I certainly am expecting them to at least make the conference finals. There's no reason they shouldn't win the East in all. But overall, ladies and gentlemen, Cleveland Cavs today 7:30 against the Bucks at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. That'll be game 1 of that 2-game series. That will also game 2 tomorrow of that series taking place tomorrow at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Giannis and the Bucks against the Cavs. Let's get into, Logan, time for some Super Bowl talk real quick here. That will be taking place in Tampa Bay at the Raymond James Stadium in Tampa Bay, Florida. Super Bowl 51 Kansas City Chiefs at Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's Super Bowl 55. It's Mahomes versus Brady. I don't think it can really get any better than this. Logan, you were mentioning Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. Let's dive into this matchup a little bit. So Tom Brady will be looking for his seventh Super Bowl victory this upcoming Sunday. If he can get it, he will have 7 Super Bowl wins, and this will be his 10th Super Bowl appearance. Now, overall, Patrick Mahomes will be playing in his 2nd Super Bowl, obviously last year, looking to defend his title. And overall, Logan, this is obviously the big names are Mahomes and Brady. But who, going into this game, which quarterback is under more pressure? Is it Patrick Mahomes to repeat as the champion, or is it Tom Brady to show and that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that he was worth it?
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. I think Patrick Mahomes has to be under more pressure. Because at the end of the day, Brady is the greatest player of all time, and this in a Super Bowl loss here is not going to change that. No one, and I mean no one, no Chiefs fan, is going to come out and say that because Patrick Mahomes beat Tom Brady, he's the greatest player of all time now, or he's even close. Tom Brady has 6 championships.
Yeah.
No one else can say that besides Tom Brady. And to me, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to get a lot of hate for it, but if Patrick Mahomes loses to Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, he's going to have to win at least 10 Super Bowls to be considered the greatest of all time in my mind.
Just from that one loss, if they were to lose.
I think so. And again, I'll tell you why. Patrick Mahomes, since he entered the league, he started 16 games. He started 15 games. The past 15 games he started, you want to know what his record is? He's 14-1.
Mm-hmm.
He's lost 1 game. In the playoffs, he has lost 1 game. Do you remember who that was to?
I have no clue about who. I can't remember who it was.
Tom Brady. Tom Brady, the New England Patriot. That's who he
You're right.
lost to.
Yep.
And
yep.
If he loses again to 43-year-old Tom Brady, I don't know if I can ever say he's the greatest of all time. So to me, it's got to be Patrick Mahomes. I don't think Brady's legacy. You can't touch Brady's legacy.
Yeah.
There's nothing to touch. It's just too. It's in plaque. It's already in stone.
And overall, Logan, let's get into the matchups a little bit. Now, we have the elite quarterback matchup we obviously mentioned with Brady versus Mahomes. But what other positions are you looking at from either team to really have a big contribution on Sunday night?
Well, to me, if Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce don't combine for at least 250 yards, and I know that sounds really crazy, I don't think this team stands a chance. I don't.
Yeah.
Because, again, I think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be a shootout per se, but I think Bruce Arians, alongside Andy Reid, is the second. I think Andy Reid is the smartest head coach offensively. I think Bruce Arians is right up there at 2 or 3. And both of these guys know what they're going to do, and they know that they're going to have to find a way to get the ball into the hands of their playmakers. So if Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce don't combine for, I would say, 200 or more yards, then something went haywire. Or Tyreek Hill caught 300 yards. Yeah, and
to me, Logan, Buccaneers, they were kind of iffy on this to start the season. They finished the season. Right now, their overall record is 14-5. Chiefs have a better record at 16-2, but I feel like these are 2 very, very evenly matched teams. Logan, I'm going to give you my pick here for the Super Bowl. Let's get into that. I've got, I was talking with a friend a few days ago, and he was telling me, it's silly to bet against the Kansas City Chiefs, obviously with the success they've had this season, but it's also silly to bet against the greatness of Tom Brady. And you were just mentioning the legacy that really is untouchable, that amazing legacy that Tom Brady has. So I'm going to have to bet against the Kansas City Chiefs here. I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think Tom Brady has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Even though he might be under a little less pressure, I still think he wants to prove that he can win with an organization other than the New England Patriots. And I think he's going to show up and show out on Sunday night. I think that he is going to rally his troops. I think Mahomes is going to have a great game, and I think it's going to go down to the wire, but I can't go against the GOAT in this situation. Logan, I'm going to turn to you. I've got Tampa Bay. Who do you have?
Personally, I have, followed myself all week about this, and I knew that I was going to have to answer this question coming on this week, but I'm going to have to go with the Bucs as well.
Yeah.
My reasoning behind this is one simple factor I mentioned in the Browns game in the divisional round, and this is the defensive aspect. I also mentioned this with the, I believe it was the Saints and the Bucs game, was it maybe? When I talked about defense, the team with the better defense was going to win the game. Or maybe it was the Bucs and the Packers, that was it. The team with the better defense is going to win that game.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be whoever gets the ball last, it's going to be the defense that plays the best. The Bucs defense is the better defense. I look at these two teams. I see some playmakers on both sides, but the Bucs are just the better defense. I think Brady's going to have a very, believe it or not, very game manager kind of mindset going into this game.
Yeah.
He is 43 years of age. I'll be honest with you. He's still an elite quarterback. I wouldn't put him in the top 5 or anything like that, but he's top 10 to me
for
right
sure.
now.
Yeah,
he
for sure.
Still put zips on the ball. He's almost 50 touchdowns on the year. He's got weapons, but to me, it's a sheer chance for this offensive line to run down the throat of the Kansas City Chiefs. They have two very, very talented running backs in Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette, both combining for over 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns on the year. I just can't see the Bucs losing this game. Yeah,
in Super Bowl 55, ladies and gentlemen, Sunday, February 7th, 6:30 p.m. We'll be live on CBS. So excited to watch this game. Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, Florida. Real quick question, Logan. Are you going to stick around at halftime to watch the weekend halftime show? Are you looking forward to that, or are you just going to take a break and come back to the second half?
I'm going to need to take a break and assess what's going on. I mean, if the Chiefs are whooping some butt, I'm not going to be watching that game for much longer.
So I'm assuming that I take it you're not a big Weekend fan then for the halftime show.
I'm not a big music fan at all. I'm just more of a football fan.
Yeah, I mean, totally. And if you're a football fan, this is going to be a wonderful game to watch. This quarterback matchup does not get any more elite right now in the NFL. Well, Logan, that actually concludes our show this week for the Cleveland Sports Show. Once again, apologize for that power outage situation. Glad we were able to get the show back up and going. Thank you so much for all of your analysis. You brought up some great points about the Cavs and overall NBA, some great points about the Super Bowl as well, and you make the show that much better. So I really appreciate all of your help and your consistency with this show, Logan. Hey, have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah, man, of course. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard me just hang up the phone with Logan Purcell, who, as I mentioned, has done a wonderful job with me here every week. If you really loved what Logan and I did in this podcast episode, you're probably crying right now because you're thinking, Darius, why are you ending this podcast episode? I love this so much. I want more of this. It's like gummy bears. I just can't get enough. Well, guess what? I have more podcast episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show on NordoniaHills.news. And guess what? If you're on NordoniaHills.news right now, you can just go to the Contributors tab and then click on my name. My name's about the second or third one down. It's Darius Sethna, spelled Darayyussethna. Click on that name, and there you'll be able to see all of my previous episodes to the podcast that I have with Logan as well. I also have articles I've written over the summer, wrote a couple during the school year as well. And also, you'll be able to see some Nordonia varsity boys basketball broadcasts. I'm doing the play-by-play for that as well. Only a few more games in their season, so make sure you tune in to those games as well. You can also check out all my work on my Twitter account. My Twitter handle is @Nordonia Sports, or you can just type in my name on Twitter, spelled Darayyussethna. Additionally, if you're on the go, don't worry because you can take the Cleveland Sports Show with you. My podcast is on Spotify. Just type in my name, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA, and you'll be able to access every single episode of the Cleveland Sports Show with Logan and I. You're not going to want to miss out because our 100th episode is coming up very, very soon. Ladies and gentlemen, you can also check out the Cleveland Sports Show on the NordoniaHills.news YouTube page. So if you just go on the main page of NordoniaHills.news for YouTube, you can see all my, listen to all my podcast episodes on there as well. The Nordonia Hills YouTube page also has the boys' varsity games, the basketball games in their entirety as well, and my play-by-play broadcasts. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our episode of the Cleveland Sports Show this week. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in and listen to us Nordonia media students. Really appreciate all of your support these last few years. Have a wonderful weekend. You heard Logan and I, we've both got the Buccaneers. Will we be right or wrong? We'll see next week in our next edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, this is Darius Sethna signing off. Have a wonderful week, and I hope you enjoy the Super Bowl. Take care, everyone.